Good morning. This is Coffee with Grant. I'm Grant. This is Coffee. That's Ruby Dog in the background. Oh yeah, we're ready to chat this morning. I have the mood lighting dimmed a little bit. Um, there's a lot going on in the world, and I kind of didn't want this to turn into a thing where I talk about current events. So I mean, we could talk about anything we want to. It's my channel. Um, and there's a new suggestion in the comments, which I'm probably going to do later this week. But my I wanted to talk about movie theaters of all things. Yeah, let's talk about movie theaters. I used to once upon a time. What is going on with my? That's fine. Whatever. I used to once upon a time work in a movie theater. It was one of my earliest jobs in high school, and I mean early in high school. And I worked at for my Oma homies, the Cinema Center, which is no longer a thing. And the Cinema Center was this big maroon boxy building. It had no aesthetically pleasing qualities from the outside. It was just a giant cinder block box that someone had painted maroon. But it was the movie theater closest to my house and the one to go to for a long time. And for a while, it had the largest screen in Nebraska until the IMAX theater was built at the zoo. Theater number one in at the Cinema Center had the largest screen, and it seated like 600 people, 600 to 700 people. Just a big deal. When you think about movie theaters now, they do not seat that many people because they are mostly diners. It's a dinner theater. It's weird that dinner theater is the thing that's coming back. Um, but I want to talk about some of those differences and some of the things that I miss so much about the old style of movie theater. And part of this is a cultural shift that streaming has absolutely killed. And there, as far as I can see, there isn't a good solution to bring it back. There isn't a like, oh, if only we all, if I mean, yeah, if everybody does something, if every single person takes an action, yeah, you can make a lot of change very quickly. But there isn't really a way to turn the ship that quickly. So, a couple of things. One, it was $5 to see a movie. That was the cost of seeing a movie. If you wanted to see a movie for cheaper, you went to the Dollar Theater, which charged 50 cents to $1 to see movies that had been out for a while. And if you thought the floors were dirty in the regular movie theater, the Dollar Theater is on another level entirely. Because I think they were like, oh, people are going to expect us not to clean it. Like if we clean it, they're going to be like, wait, how are they making money? But if your shoes are literally, you're in danger of losing your shoes, like every once in a while you just see like a little child's flip flop just permanently adhered to the concrete floor with all the spilled soda and the popcorn bits. Yeah, that's the Dollar Theater. Cinema Center was like your middle of the road, but it was for a while. I mean, I'm not even going to say it was the Douglas Theater Company's flagship theater. So I worked there when it was the Douglas Theater Company. I think I still have a shirt somewhere. I still have a Douglas Theater Company polo shirt. I'd have to do some hunting to figure out where that went. Um, but they had 20 grand out on 120th and Maple, Twin Creeks Cinema, and the Cinema Center. And I'm blanking on one more. There's like the other one that was, but we, it was a lot of fun. Working in a movie theater is a lot of fun. We got to see movies for free. As long as it wasn't opening weekend, you could basically go in and see movies for free. And, if your friends are paying $5, then you could go in and see a movie. Or if, you just hung out with other people who worked at the theater, you would just go in on your day off and you would sit in movies all day long, which was so much fun. Um, but there's a certain cultural element of going to the movies that I think I was a part of in that moment, and that shortly afterwards, I'm saying shortly afterwards, but that was kind of the ultimate highlight. I'm going to point to a high water mark There is definitely a high watermark for midnight movie premieres. Okay? And some of these were fantastic to be a part of as a kid. But being able to, as a group, go and see the Lord of the Rings movies one every year, they were always at New Year's when they released, one every year, and going in the winter and the cold to bundle up and then wait in line for the midnight premiere of Lord of the Rings and then seeing just the act of seeing a movie with a bunch of not just like-minded people who haven't seen the movie before, but also fans. That's huge, and we don't get that. Maybe in your bigger cities, maybe if you've got your art house theaters or somebody like the Alamo is like, hey, if you're a fan and you want to rekindle that experience, buy tickets to this. But one thing is broken the midnight movie, and that is releasing them on Thursdays. I, I I could dive into what it is. I remember there's some sort of loophole, but basically the idea was, uh, okay, it used to be Friday. Friday was the movie premiere day, right? It's like, oh, it's the beginning of the weekend. We're going to have this movie premiere. People are going to leave work. They're going to be done with school for the week. And they're going to go, oh, we should go see Alien versus Predator. But then they said, technically, we can show it where legally, our legal agreement is we can show it on Friday. And so if we have a midnight showing, people can see it a little earlier than everybody else. And that kind of is like a Thursday night specialty thing. So you would, and especially in high school, you'd want to go to the midnight movie because you and your friends had gotten to stay up late and you'd gotten to see the latest movie before everybody else, and you could talk about it and nobody else could talk about it on Friday. And it was a whole thing. Um, and then they were like, oh, I guess it's so weird how Hollywood and businesses tend to do the wrong logic, but they're like, oh, okay. Instead of recognizing how magical that is and how much of a cultural touchstone that was and an experience of going to the movies together at midnight, and it's something special and it's late and it's people, everybody guaranteed has never seen the movie before. There's no previous showings. You go from that to being like, well, yeah, but people with little kids want to see it early, I guess. So we're gonna have it be 7 o'clock on Friday instead of midnight. And partially, I think that is because they didn't want to staff the movie theater later. Because a midnight showing would mean that you had to have staff up to, like, to handle the concessions of sales and tickets and everything. You had to staff up to midnight when the movie started. And then you had to have a minimal staff person there to keep the movie running, have one person in the concession stand all night in case somebody came out and wanted a refill or something. You couldn't just shut it down, because that's where movie theaters make all their money. And I could see where cost-cutting measures would have also said, oh, but like, how stupid do you have to be to say, oh, we're going to, for cost-cutting measures, we're going to get rid of one of the things that brings people to the theater out of their way. Like, if anything, double down on the midnight movie. But I'm going to point to that because the midnight movie is no longer a thing. Nobody, especially if you can see the movie at 7, why would you wait till midnight to do it? And movie theaters are increasingly become places where people are going to just try to sell you stuff. You are seen as a literal captive audience. They're like, oh, so you want to be entertained for 2 hours? Well, buckle up because we're gonna sell you. We're gonna hit you with 40 minutes of local ads before you get there, and then we're also going to just gouge you for food, whether it's traditional concession stand food, or we're going to have somebody deliver it to your table in the theater, which is going to be a huge distraction. Anyway, I'm pointing to the high point. The high point, I would argue, of midnight movies is Snakes on a Plane. The midnight premiere of the movie Snakes on a Plane, that classic Samuel Jackson cult hit, which is arguably a terrible movie. And the reason I'm pointing to that as the highlight of midnight movies is because it is a terrible movie that did a complete 180 and became a fantastic, one of the best movie viewings of my life because of the environment that it was in, because it was in the lens of a midnight movie. And that's That's fascinating to think about. That you can still be fantastically entertained because on its face, Snakes on a Plane, yeah, it's campy. It kind of doesn't take itself too seriously. And we as the audience were wondering, like, are they really going to do this? But having an entire 600, I saw it in Theater One at the Cinema Center on opening night. We had a packed house. So, like 600 something people who are all sitting there, and everybody was yelling and talking at the screen, but like in a fun way, not in like an annoying way, but in a reactive way. Like everybody had these very honest reactions where they the couple goes to make out in the airplane bathroom, and you see this snake come up the toilet bowl, and everybody's like, "Oh no, they're not gonna have it! Oh, it's not gonna! Oh shit! Oh!" And I mean, so it was so fun. That is I think the happiest I've ever been coming out of a midnight movie, just because of how much collectively that group of people laughed. And I've watched that movie since, and it loses all of that magic just watching it, just absorbing it. There's a certain part of a movie where you are bonding culturally with the other people who see it with you, and you get this feeling for this crowd reaction of like, oh, other people are laughing. You're more likely to laugh out loud if there's a crowd than if you're watching something yourself. I very, very rarely will actually laugh aloud sitting on my couch watching a movie. Doesn't mean the movie was made any worse, but the argument is that you can improve the viewing experience of a movie, and aesthetically you can improve your the cultural impact of a movie by having bunch of people get together and watch it at the same time. So, like the fact that movie theaters have decided to become dinner theater, and don't get me wrong, I love the Alamo Drafthouse. They are not sponsoring this video. In fact, no one is sponsoring anything. But the Alamo Drafthouse did a couple of things right, and then they screwed themselves over in other ways. I love that they show old movies and they show cult classics and get the licensing to other stuff, because I think the Alamo Drafthouse does understand this. They understand that it is fun to get a group of your friends together and go see the Goonies on the big screen, to go see horror movies and hear everyone gasp at the right moments. Some of but the Alamo Drafthouse has also been like, hey, what if we just really drove it home that we're going to try to make money? And I get it. In my view, I still have this $5 price tag in my head. Like, I get that the cost of movies has gone up. I get that the infrastructure has gone up. I understand the overhead cost of running a movie theater in a business, and I understand even more the overhead cost of running a restaurant, which is what they're doing on the other side of it. But I cannot justify spending the money that I spend to go to the movies. Even just 2 tickets at $12 a piece, plus the online convenience fee. So apparently, because it's more convenient for me, I have to pay more, I think is the logic. But what it is, it's absorbing their margins are so thin, it's absorbing the credit card fees. You basically, as the customer, have to pay the credit card fees, and that is the advantage of paying, I guess, online for you, is you get to pay. Like, the costs are too high, and what that means is that I also can't imagine taking a bunch of children to the movies. And some of my favorite memories as a little kid is like going to see Toy Story at the theater, going to see Jurassic Park, although I probably shouldn't have. That sort of thing, it would be entirely cost prohibitive. It's like more than my wife and I would spend on a really, really nice anniversary dinner to take a group of people to the movies. That, and they seem to be coasting. But the Alamo Drafthouse does one thing really well, and that's why I'm kind of okay with spending a little bit more money, is that they don't nickel and dime me with ads at the beginning. All of their content at the beginning of the movie is things that are relevant in some degree to the movie that you're watching. So you get like a little trivia, you get fan-made content, you get other stuff. Like when we went to go see Star Wars, they had a bunch of interviews from the 70s and 80s of the main cast being interviewed on late night shows. They had a little snippet from the Star Wars Holiday Special. They had commercials with apparently the little known breakfast cereal C3POs, stuff like that. That was fun. That was a reason. It was a building of the cultural impact of movies. I think the Alamo Drafthouse got that. I just miss the affordability and not feeling like, oh, this was fun. Next week is a different movie. We should do it again, and not going, next week is a different movie. No, we can't do that. That's our grocery budget. Like, certain other things like, oh, the midnight movie though. There was a theater. There's still, I was going to say there's still a theater in town. It was the Dundee Theater. And the Dundee Theater is a shadow of its former self. I say that knowing that it is now better, cleaner, and more well managed than it was before. And yes, it is worse, in my opinion. In high school, in Omaha, there was a movie theater that had just clung to life. Just on the edge of the Dundee neighborhood, where I guess Dundee extends below Dodge, but I would argue that it doesn't. Dundee, right on like 50th and Dodge Street, right there. I mean, and it had maybe a sliver of sidewalk in the front of it. So it was like, here's the building, here's the sidewalk, here's very fast traffic, and you're like scrunched up because they'd like expanded. And the Dundee Theater would show art house films, and then at midnight they would show old movies on film for the midnight movie. And for a while, for a like golden period, the audience would just comment on them like it was Mystery Science Theater. And I have somewhere in a box, I have all my ticket stubs. They didn't have actual like printed tickets. It was like those carnival tickets you could buy in a roll at like Mangelson's. And they would just write, like, I would just write the name of the movie on there. But we went and saw so many great classic movies at midnight throughout high school with the whole crew. I mean, we got probably 15, 20 people together. My house was really close, so we'd kind of all carpool and then break up. And it was one of the few things you could do after midnight when you weren't, of age yet, when you weren't able to drink. But oh my God, watching The Princess Bride on the big screen with a whole group of fans who were there to both kind of poke fun at it and just love that movie so much. Clue, Monty Python's Holy Grail. Monty Python's Holy Grail is one of those movies that I didn't fully appreciate, again, until you watch it in a theater. It's funny. It has a lot of funny moments, but it is hilarious in a theater full of people. It is, because people are catching jokes that you don't realize, and then you're like, I was like, oh, the opening credits are cute, they're clever, but some people fucking lose their shit at the opening credits of Monty Python's Holy Grail, and it's fun to watch those people enjoy themselves and be part of it. Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders is such a great movie to watch with a crowd of people. I mean, but these are people who are super fans of Indiana Jones, people who cheered when Indy came on the screen, people who booed at the Nazis, people who when I'm blanking on his name now, you know the guy, that guy pulls out his like chain thing, and the entire audience, because everybody sitting in this movie has seen Indiana Jones before, they know exactly what this is, but everybody, including myself, was all like, oh God, oh, what's he gonna do, oh, and he wraps it up and he's like, oh, it's a coat hanger, oh, whoo, and we all turned to each other just because we knew it was coming, and then had a good laugh about it. Like, that's part of something that streaming has killed. And yes, we've sacrificed convenience, but I'll be honest with you, I don't have any of those memories or stories to tell from a movie premiere that I watched in my living room. Like, what am I going to say? I'm like, yeah, it was really good. I was like super gassy during the whole thing. You had to be there. Yeah, we traded convenience and being in a comfort of our own homes for social interaction. And I think this builds towards my nostalgia towards movie theaters, builds towards this nostalgia for social connection that we used to have naturally and now have to actuate and like go out into the world and find. And I want to keep this one short. I got shit to do today. So anyway, yeah, if you've got a fun movie theater story, let me know. I always like to hear those. You know, like the fun. I've got a whole bunch of them. Um, Actually, okay, I got 10 minutes left. I want to tell this story because it's one of my favorite moments of a crowd, like a crowd who's there for the movie, galvanizing around a thing, and it was so much fun. So, uh, in undergrad, this is in Lincoln. I one of my roommates. I am all art and science or art and music. My whole thing is art and music. You give me a creative medium, I'm here for it. You know, painting, sculpture, whatever. My roommate, his name is Richie, and Richie is my like my the yin to my yang. He is all math and science, and is a absolutely brilliant human being. And Richie got me into Star Trek, and I had never, in passing, but I had not been a huge Star Trek fan. And he's like, "Oh, this is an opportunity." And you know how when you get a friend and they're like, "I want to I'm going to introduce you to something." That was that. It's like, "Oh, we have to start with Wrath of Khan. Let's start with Wrath of Khan, and then we have to go to Star Trek 4. We got to go to this one, and then we got to watch the original series, and then we're going to get you into Next Generation and the whole thing." And so over the course of several years, I watched everything. I watched Deep Space Nine. I watched Voyager. I watched all of Next Generation. I watched all the original series. And at that time, that was all we had. Back in the day, that was all the Star Trek we had, and I watched all the movies. And then J.J. Abrams announces that he's going to release a new Star Trek movie, and this is right at the cusp of me being like, "This is great timing," because I had run out of stuff to watch. Good going, J.J. Abrams, not knowing the content of the film, right? But again, this is the tail end. This is the tail end of Netflix is still sending people movies in the mail at this point. This is the tail end of movie theaters and the beginning of streaming. So midnight movies were still a thing. So they had a midnight showing of J.J. Abrams' new Star Trek, and we're like, we have to go. And Richie had a uniform. I forget what era it was, but he had a captain's uniform, and no, it would have been a science officer's uniform for sure, knowing him. But anyway, and I had bought tickets for everybody. And back then, he was like, yeah, you just kind of like went in and sat down. Like nobody really. So we all waited in line. I was the first person in line. I was so excited. I went in and I reserved the entire front of the second section of the theater. You know, where you've got the low section and then you've got like a little gap, and then you've got the risen section. So we ran and we reserved all these seats, and we knew that Richie wasn't there. And I was getting kind of concerned, so I'm like texting him, with the old T9 on my flip phone. This is, I'm an old man. So we're texting him like, "Hey man, you almost here?" He's like, "Yeah, we're almost here." So he had brought a date who I think it was like a first or second date to the movies. Bold move. I know it didn't work out, but I'm like, bold move of bringing a first or second date to a midnight movie when you are in costume in a Star Trek uniform. And that is a gamble, and I really hope it I think it paid off. But anyway, he's like, "Man, we're running late. We're running a little bit late." And the one thing I noticed, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, but like they're about to start, blah blah blah. I have seats saved for you." And what we'd ended up doing is, how like the movie theaters still have like a row of seats in that area where you could potentially wheel a wheelchair up, and there's like a little gap where a wheelchair could sit, and then there's like a set of seats in the middle, and there's another gap for where a wheelchair could sit on the other side, and then there's rows. So there's like this little first row there. So we had the entire theater is packed full except for two seats in the very center of this second section that look like they are now reserved for like royalty. And so we're all sitting around, and I'm going, hey guys, like he's on his way in. He just texted me. Like when he comes in, let's like stand up and like applaud him. Just you, me, and the five of us that came together. Like let's just stand up. And so Richie walks in costume with his date, and I look around and there's no one else in costume. He's the only person who showed up in costume. And we see him and stand up, and the entire theater stands up and gives him a standing ovation. They are cheering. And I like gesture down to the two reserved seats, and he's like, "Oh, yes." And like his date sits down, he sits down, the audience settles, it becomes dead silent, and I just see Richie point to the screen and go, "On screen," and the lights dim at that exact moment, and the movie starts, and it was perfect. It was like we couldn't have done it again if we tried to plan that. It was so, and yeah, oh, it was, but that was the thing. It's like everybody was just excited to be there, and when goofy shit happens at the midnight movie, like that's fun. It's fun when people dress up. It's fun when people when you have surprises that way. It's fun when you have a story to tell like that once you're going. Because obviously the J.J. Abrams Star Wars is not great. It's okay, but it's not great. And we've seen better iterations of Star Wars since then. So, oh my God, did I say Star Wars? The J.J. Abrams Star Wars is okay. The J.J. Abrams Star Trek is not as good. Wait, no, it's neither. Isn't it neither? I think neither of those are good. Oh shit, nerds are gonna roast me for sure. It's early. Don't. Oh, either way, you know what I meant. Yeah, I don't think we're ever gonna get that back. I don't think that magic, the midnight magic of a movie, is ever gonna come back. I think there's times where you could get close to it, where if you're their premiere week and you're going to see something like Wicked or something that has a big fan following, you're in the theater with a bunch of people who want to be there, you might be able to recreate it. But I feel like that's a piece of American culture that's a little bit lost to time. Certainly the cost of it and the convenience of it and the accessibility and all of those things that made going to the movies fun. And yeah. Well, on that note, I guess the sun's up. I got other shit to do. We came in under half an hour this time. Um, yeah, that's for today. If you have suggestions for future rants or topics, drop them in the comments. Be kind to each other, and I will see you tomorrow. Mm. Ugh, that's cold now. I talked for too long.